Hello and welcome. This is episode 41 of Inspiring Insights. So happy to see you all here again this week. Jared, Conastantu, Guramahagat, Ishmish Aaron Edwards. That is Gaelic for hello, good day. How are you? Thank you for coming. My name is Erin Edwards. My pronouns are they and them. And this is episode 41. So welcome everyone in. I'm absolutely overjoyed to be kicking off this podcast in the middle of Indigenous History Month here in what we know as Turtle Island, or sorry, what we know as Canada, what I usually call Turtle Island, and also coming toward a close during Pride Month. So I'm happy that everyone is here and that we've had some incredible discussions so far this month, including today's guest, who I'm going to introduce in just one second. I want to say a special thanks to Juniper Naturopathic Clinic in Fort McMurray, Alberta, for sponsoring this episode. Thank you, the naturopathic doctors there in Fort McMurray. If you would personally like to sponsor an episode, or your business would, please get a hold of me and just put it in the subject line, sponsorship for Inspiring Insights, at hello@reawaken.com. Sorry, reawakenco.com. Okay, so a little bit about me. I'm your host, Erin Edwards. I'm an uprooted Newfoundlander. I have Irish and Welsh descendants. I'm an offspring of 2 teachers, and I take that very seriously. I think I have much to learn and also much to step into in my own teachings here on this podcast and in my own business, which is soul-centered mindfulness. I also do retreats and mindfulness courses. The next one is coming up on Sunday, August 1st. Keep your eyes peeled for that. And so, like I said, here we are in Turtle Island. We take up space, Bryn and I both take up space in Tekaronto, otherwise known as Toronto. And this was a land, this is a land that was, and it still is, tended by very many nations. And I want to give them a shout out today. The Anishinaabeg, the Chippewa, the Wendat, the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, and more recently, the Mississaugas of the Credit. And as a newcomer and a settler, I have been invited to lift the one spoon with all others here in this place and care for this land within the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Belt Treaty. I commit to respectful collaboration and representation here on this podcast. And just as I have been invited to lift the spoon, I invite you now all to peaceably lift that spoon as well and weave with me a new world of possibility in wellness and healthcare and mindfulness, and start paving the way for a more accessible, more beautiful, and more defined wellness industry. That means, I think we have to start with decolonizing our language, decolonizing our own careers and where our career paths take us, decolonizing the ways in which we think and act about medicine and healing and spirituality. And that also means uplifting and supporting folks in marginalized communities. And so using my voice for change here on this platform is one way that I do that, to actually break cycles. And I'm happy to have Bryn Bamber here today as well. And we're going to talk a little bit more about spirituality and healing and all that good stuff. I think podcasts have so much potential for healing, and this here, Inspiring Insights, is, I think, my true calling. It's definitely led to some soul-centered human transformation, and I cannot wait to introduce Bryn here today as well. So if you're out there in internet land, drop us a wave in the comments below. I want to say thank you for tuning in to this episode, and feel free as we go along to write any comments in the chat box. And without further ado, Bryn Bamber, mental health professional, trained in core energetics. Thank you so much, Bryn. Let me read your bio and then we'll get right into this beautiful, amazing chat that we have lined up here today. So Bryn lived for years as a sensitive perfectionist with anxiety coursing through her veins. And through core energetics, she began to find the root cause of why she's so anxious and take steps to drastically reduce her suffering. She works with artists, healers, and entrepreneurs to help them overcome imposter syndrome and make more money with their own gifts through healing childhood habits, patterns, and trauma. Her story about the path to healing has been featured on Tiny Buddha, Introvert Dear, and the Courage Makers and Rare Birds podcasts. Bryn, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited.
Of course, of course. Okay, I need to ask you first and foremost, you're a mental health professional trained in core energetics. Maybe give us a little background about that. And maybe even before that, tell us a little bit more about how you got here.
How I got into core energetics and mental health. Yeah, so I had high anxiety for a long time, but I had no idea that I had it, because it was my kind of norm. And so I just thought I was stressed and everyone was stressed, and that, my stress levels were nothing special. And I really started to wake up to maybe that my stress levels were too high when I graduated from university. I got a job at a nonprofit. I was super excited about the work I was doing. And within a year, I burnt out. So it was kind of like I got my dream job and then I burnt out from my dream job. And so, yeah, I was at a real crossroads because I was like, I don't want to just apply for another job. I just am going to apply for the same job, but I can't do this job, or, I'm feeling incredibly drained at this job. And so what I decided to do was I went to an ashram, a yoga retreat and study center. And initially I went for a month, and then I extended and extended repeatedly. And I ended up living at this ashram for 2 years and studying yoga and meditation, and, became certified as a yoga teacher. But really started my own healing journey. And so that was the beginning of me realizing that I maybe had some mental health struggles that I needed support with. And then I ended up, moving, leaving the ashram after 2 years, feeling like it was the right time. And I met someone, like a friend who was doing core energetics, and she invited me to one of her events. And literally when I walked into the room and felt the energy of the room, I just felt at home. And I had a positive, transformative experience. It was like a 2-hour evening session. And so then I, joined a week, or I think I did a weekend workshop, and then I joined a weekly group. And so I was starting to have my own transformations through core energetics. And I shortly thereafter, I decided to go all in and get certified. I was like, this works. It's working for me. And so I want more of this, and I want to be able to share this with others. And so what is core energetics?
Yeah, what is it?
So it's in the Freudian lineage. So it shares some similarities to traditional psychoanalysis, where we're looking at, patterns and habits from childhood. As a child, you often have to choose attachment over authenticity, and to maintain the connection to your primary caregivers. And so, that can that can carry into adulthood, and we can be choosing attachment over authenticity when it's no longer required. When we're kids, we can't say, I want to move to a different house or I want a different parent. We have to make it work with the folks that are raising us. But as adults, if you are in an incredibly toxic relationship or workplace, you have more choice. You can change. But sometimes, these neural pathways are formed of, this is how to relate. This is how to be in relationship, is by, maybe people pleasing, as an example. So part of the work is just kind of, looking at what happened in childhood. How's it impacting your life now? Do you want to keep it? Do you want to change it? Some of the ways that it kind of is different than more traditional psychotherapy is there's a somatic component. So we work a lot with emotions in the body. And one example of that is, if you imagine a 5-year-old that's super angry and wants to stomp and rage, but can't. It hasn't gone well with the caregivers in the past. So the child is like, okay, I need to not have a temper tantrum.
Got it.
The way that a child will stop that is literally like tensing their arms, holding their arms down by their sides, holding their breath slightly, and physically restraining themselves. So if you do that for years, or in some cases, decades, you're going to develop chronic tension. So people who have suppressed anger often have chronic tension in their shoulders, their neck, their jaw, all the places where the energy goes when you're angry and you want to just growl and punch, but you stop it. So part of the work I'm doing with clients as well is different movements, putting pressure sometimes on, the shoulders or on the jaw if we're working with suppressed anger, to physically move it. Because sometimes what can happen when we're looking at kind of that attachment over authenticity thing is, you can say, oh, I always people please and I want to change it, but sometimes it's embedded in our bodies. And so it can be very hard to change in our life now if these patterns of being are still there. And then kind of a third element is there's a spiritual and energetic element of core energetics. So looking at, part of the work can be looking at, what is your life path and what is your intuition telling you, and how do you want to help heal the world, and what are the gifts you want to bring to the world. That answer?
Yeah, I had not heard about core energetics before this, and yeah, that paints a really good picture, Bryn. Thank you for describing that. And I get in the sense that, and I just want to repeat some things that you said so we can kind of clarify. So there is this kind of psychological, maybe talk therapy piece of it, and then 3 overarching things. So that being one of them, the second being this kind of somatic experience. So you see people one-on-one in person, and you might, be that person to offer them some guidance as to some physical things that might be going on in their body. Okay, nice. And then third, the spiritual component, which in my opinion, if I can humbly state my opinion here, there's not a lot of spiritual component in what I've seen, in general. Like, I'm trained as a naturopathic doctor. I don't practice right now, but I kind of was drawn more to naturopathic medicine because it said that it connected mind, body, spirit. But what I really didn't see it doing as I, went through the program is just that, is how to actually teach us to connect. And spirituality to me, maybe I'll get your thoughts on this as well. Spirituality to me is just feeling more connected to something,
Yeah.
connecting to an outside source, whatever that is, just being able to be in flow with that. What are your thoughts on I guess what spirituality is? Because I know that it's becoming more, there's this whole new wave kind of spiritual approach. Gen Z, the
Mhm.
new generations coming up through, and all the millennials are kind of in it now as well. And I fall into that. Um, but trying to find like a real authenticity about it. So, yeah, maybe in your own words, what is spirituality?
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, just to say one more thing about core energetics, those things are all woven together.
Mm,
So in
mhm.
the course of a session, we'll start, often a client will come and say, I got in a fight with a friend and da, 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 and we'll talk about it. And then
Yes.
I'll say, okay, how do you feel in your body when
Mm,
you tell me this story? And then maybe we'll work with the body, and then maybe we'll work with intuition, so it's all kind of, it's not really like, oh, we have one session where we just talk the whole session. That's kind of rare. It's more that all three are integrated.
nice.
And yes, I do. I have some clients that come to me because they're seeing a therapist or some sort of mental health professional, but they feel like they can't share some of their spiritual beliefs. So I have had some clients that specifically come to me because they feel like they have to kind of hide a part of themselves that is, for some people, not for everybody, but for some people, it's a big, important part. And so it's helpful for them to work with someone who can fully like go into the woo with them
Mhm.
and explore it from a mental health perspective. Okay, what is spirituality? So I guess I really started to explore my spirituality at the ashram. That was kind of where I started to connect. And I one of the philosophies of the ashram that I lived at and that I subscribe to is that there are many, many paths to the light. At the ashram, we called it the light. Some people call it God, some people call it the universe, Mother Earth, whatever you want to call it. And so I really believe that, in all of the world's religions, there is there are some people who are using that religion to move towards, becoming a better person and living out their life's purpose. And I also want to acknowledge that nearly every religion, if not every religion, has been, wielded by folks who use it in a way that's destructive.
Mhm.
Um, so for me, there are many, many paths, and I guess a big component, I really live my life based on a connection with some sort of higher power, and I love like bringing it into the minutia and into building my business and deciding to write what Instagram caption to write. Like, I'm
Yes.
like all in having kind of, I'm working with one coach right now, and she talks about the spirit of your business.
Mhm.
Your business has a spirit. Um, there's some thing from the spiritual realm that wants to come through, that wants to come to planet Earth, and you can be the vessel if you choose to accept it. So I love her language and the way she talks about it, and then I'll read other people who talk about it in different ways. So yeah, I'm not subscribed to like one particular I don't know, text or
Mm-hmm.
body of spiritual teachings. Although, I mean, what I learned at the ashram has probably influenced me the most, but I love reading books, you know, from different spiritual traditions and different spiritual teachers, and, you know, reading Pema Chodron and Buddhism, and reading, you know, Christian mysticism, and yeah, some of the yogic texts that I've read.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And thank you for saying that. You know, the abuse of power is you know, not something to just be skimmed over. And I think maybe too there is this sense, at least in the circles that I kind of grew up in, that there's this almost like this rebuttal or this resistance against religion, but not necessarily against spirituality.
Mm-hmm.
And you work specifically with folks who you call spiritual seekers, you know, people who are out there looking for what you describe as something that, yeah, that is maybe a higher power or something that's bigger than them. And I'm curious as to how you find those folks, you know, how those people say, okay, I'm at my therapist and I feel like I'm still hiding a part of myself. Who else, like, who can I go see that will accept me or that part of me?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it's a bunch of different ways. I mean, there are communities that I've been a part of, and that I've met people, and those people have reached out. There's Facebook groups, you know,
Mm-hmm.
like I've started posting a little bit more recently in heart-centered, soul-driven entrepreneurs, which is a free Facebook group, and they kind of have like a day of the week. You have to follow their what day it is, but
Okay.
you know, I had a initial call, like a consultation call with someone. I think it was, oh no, it was yesterday. I'm like, I think it was today, but no, it was yesterday. From that group, who, you know, she's in a group that's called Soul Driven
Mm-hmm.
Entrepreneurs. So, you know, that's kind of a cool way. And then other people, it's word of mouth, right? Like
Yes.
clients of mine have friends who are like, I can't talk about XYZ with my therapist. And they say, oh, well, I'm working with this mental health professional who's deep deep into the woo. So, you know, why don't you talk to her and see if it's a fit. So all the ways.
Yes.
All the
Yeah, for
ways. But
sure.
yeah, I think just trying to, you know, talk about it and share about it, and yeah, share about things that have helped me. And if it touches someone, then
Mm-hmm.
that's great. And if they want to, if it touches them so deeply they want to reach out, then that's great.
Nice. Yeah, and you mentioned the woo. I feel like there is this sort of like, you know, people are almost reclaiming that in a way.
Yeah.
Like the woo woo, like, okay, are that, like, is that person like kind of into it? Because that's where I'm at, you know, and that's who I want to see, which is awesome. Um, you mentioned that you also were, you know, or still are, I guess, a highly sensitive person, Bryn. Um, and there are a lot of folks out there that I think would also identify as, you know, maybe a HSP, highly sensitive person, or someone who's an empath. Um, do you have any sort of advice for someone who's kind of struggling with that lens or with that identity? And because this world today is so fast paced, this world is, you know, really, it goes against the grain for sure of all the folks out there who maybe need extra time or space or There's extra support maybe in a world that really doesn't offer it. I'm sure you work with those folks, what would be your advice to those people?
Yeah, I mean, one thing that was very healing for me was, and this might sound corny, but was like joining one of the HSP Facebook groups and just
Mm,
reading all these posts of people being like, the fluorescent lighting at the grocery store is like gives me a headache, and no, noise, and being attuned to other people's emotions, and just reading post after post after post and just being like, oh my God, I'm not alone. I'm not broken. I'm not, like just feeling this sense of like, oh, me too, me too, me too.
yes.
with so much of that. And yeah, and I think that was my first step in really starting to heal and just accept who I am. This is who I am. And yeah, I hate malls. And
You're allowed to hate malls.
yeah, and I love nature, and yeah, maybe some people don't get it. Maybe some people don't understand. And that's okay. Like, to start to learn that, I think one of the most important things as a highly sensitive person, and also the most difficult thing as a highly sensitive person, is to advocate for your needs, to stand up for yourself, to set boundaries, to say, I can't share a hotel room with 4 other people. It stresses me out, or whatever. A lot of what comes to mind is like family, holiday time with families, or trips, and if other members of your family are not highly sensitive, they might be like, oh, why do you need
Yes.
alone time, or why do you need this, or why do you need that? And to just, you don't have to explain, and just to say, yeah, this is what I need, and I'm gonna do what I need, or I'm gonna shorten the amount of time I'm at a family holiday if it's very intense and loud and chaotic for your nervous system.
Mm.
So I think, yeah, starting to learn your needs, to read about it. I haven't really read the book. The Facebook group really did it for me. I know other people, I can't remember who wrote the kind of seminal book on HSPs, but that can be a resource. There's tons of podcasts and everything. But to kind
Yes.
of just, however you learn and take information, to learn that this is what you need, and then to start to advocate for it, even if other people don't understand or don't like it.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And thank you for that. So I actually have read The Highly Sensitive Person, which is by Elaine Aron. I think that came out
Right.
in 1995, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
But more recently, she republished or published another book under the same title, but it's the workbook. It's a
Oh.
workbook guide for highly sensitive persons or something like that. And I think it came out in like 2018, maybe. And I found that book way more, the 1995 one was great. And she speaks a lot to the research and all that she's done. And then also the 2018 one was a little bit more up to date, and it just, talked about real world issues that we can all relate to nowadays.
Mm.
And I would recommend any of the listeners out there to definitely read that book. It's really good. So her name is Elaine Aron, and I think you just spell it. Her last name is Aron. Yeah. But that's great. Great to know, Bryn, that, the Facebook groups are out there as well, to just say hi, hello, and to know you're not alone, that this experience is, everything that we're experiencing is unique to us in our own way, but also there are tons of people out there that are, struggling with this, the way that the world is set up. So I think that's very comforting in itself.
Yeah, and I honestly, I don't think I posted very much or commented. Like for me, and I'm not prescribing, you can do whatever you want, but for me, somehow there's something healing in just being like, oh, there's thousands of people in this group, and they all have all of the posts are very relatable to me.
Yes.
And just being like, okay, I'm not broken. There's nothing wrong here. I get to not like fluorescent lights and attend to that. And I don't have to change or try and fit in with the world that has a lot of fluorescent lights, frankly.
Yes. Yes, the world has a ton of fluorescence. I really like that, Bryn. Thank you for sharing that. I want to talk a little bit about this concept that I know that you use in your practice called aligned badness. What is that? What is it all about? I sense it has something to do with kind of resisting the patriarchy a little bit.
Yeah.
Tell us more.
Yeah. So this is a concept that I started to kind of create for myself when I was struggling with just wanting to be perfect and to be good and to not hurt anybody ever. And I had this one session with my coach, the coach I'm working with, where she was like, we kind of explored, like, can you go through life without hurting anyone? And even if you shut up and you hide in a room and you don't say anything, you don't state any strong opinions, somebody's still going to be hurt by that in some way. And if you go out and you speak your truth, other people are not going to like it and might feel hurt. And so she was like, what if it's good to be bad? What if it's just good to be bad? And my brain was like I could feel literal static in my head. Like it was not computing. Like I was like, I want to be on board, and my brain is like, and so, we kind of left it there. And then the next week we were talking about it, and we talked about aligned badness because, patriarchy, those of us who were socialized as women, there are all these rules of being nice, being thin, being pretty, taking care of everyone else, putting our needs last, being agreeable, all of these things. And so in order to deprogram all these messages, there's like, what, I don't know, 127 or probably more of. And so like in terms of, doing thought work, it's like I could work on each one individually.
At least 127.
And it's good to have an opinion. It's good to make money. It's good to, or the shortcut is, what if it's just good to be bad, but in an aligned way? That's like my caveat, because I can't get behind bad for the sake of being bad for the sake of like purposely hurting people. No, my brain can't do that. But I can get behind this idea of aligned badness, of, breaking rules, breaking stereotypes, and yeah, just, I've been using it with my clients, and even like the expectations that are placed on mothers are even wilder.
Yes.
And so working with, you know, mothers and saying, what if you're just a bad mom? And one client we've been working on, she can be a bad mom and a good dad, because society's expectations of men parents is just such a different. She was like, oh my God, that would be so easy.
So much.
So playing with language to create shortcuts and create more, you know, to get rid of perfectionism, to get to the juiciness of life, to the things that we're excited about, we're passionate about, that we need. And if anyone's listening wants some homework, I would just say do some aligned badness. Find something that feels kind of bad, kind of breaking the rules, in alignment with your heart, and go do that today or this week.
I can think of one example, Bryn, for anyone out there. And I feel like this was a real struggle that I had when I was coming out as non-binary, because the non-binary, literally you exist in no categorization and you just create your own, right? Or you once and for all just disintegrate all the categories and ask exactly for what you need. And yeah, I think that was kind of a step in my own aligned badness, as you say, because I started to overcome the voices in the back of my head that said, who are you to do that?
Right.
Who are you to break out of that cycle?
Who do you think you are?
Yeah, who do you think you are doing that? Asking for people to change your pronouns, asking for people to accept you the way that you are. Who would have thought?
Yeah.
Who would have thought, right? And it's hard work. I feel that there was these voices in the back of my head just constantly whispering in my ear saying, you're not worthy to do that. Who are you? And I actually was motivated by that to say, okay, I need, I actually am worthy here. And like, why do I have these voices going on? And what is that pattern that I've been trained maybe since childhood, in the attachment versus authenticity pattern of where am I showing up and how am I showing up and who am I performing for? And why am I even performing?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, that's totally part of the patriarchal programming, right? If you are born with certain organs, then you have to, identify this way.
Yes.
And yeah, so it's, really powerful. And I imagine, difficult in some ways to stand up for what's right for you and to trust yourself and to, say, I'm worthy of this. And I get to take up space and I get to say, no, this doesn't work for me. And yes, this does. And the world is not always going to be on your side, and some parts of the world always will be and other parts won't, with all of these things. But I kind of that's why I kind of like the word aligned badness, because then if someone says you're bad, you're like, yeah,
nice.
That was my homework, was to be bad. So
and I'm doing my homework. Wow, I love that. So yes, everyone out there in podcast land or in YouTube land, your challenge for the day, and maybe you can write that in the comments. How are you going to be aligned and also bad?
Yeah, and it can be, small things. It can be, like going and getting some ice cream or drinking a beer, and it can be, you know, saying no to a family member, or stating your opinion online, even if not everyone is going to agree with you, or you imagine some people won't agree with you. So there's a whole spectrum. Wearing an outfit that makes you feel good, whether it's very sexy or modest or somewhere in between, or, you know, loud colors or soft color, like, but whatever feels good to you. Like, there's so unfortunately there are so many things that we've been told are bad, so much to choose from.
Yeah, I'm sure we can all think of a couple out there. I want to just touch on something that just popped into my head, Bryn, which is this concept of, okay, how do I step into, you know, what some folks would call my own power, my own aligned badness? How do I step into that without seeming or behaving super cocky, or maybe taking that element of power that we touch on and abusing it, right?
Right.
How do we stay rooted? How do we remain in our truth as we go forward in that?
Yeah. So I love this question, because I ran a workshop last week called How to Be Cocky.
Nice.
Because I think that's a message that a lot of us are given as well. Be confident, be strong, but don't be cocky.
Right.
So there's this narrow, I feel like the patriarchy gives us so many narrow passages that we're supposed to fit into. Be pretty, but not too sexy. Don't be a slut, don't be a whore, but be pretty, don't be ugly, don't be a slut. Like, but it's like this narrow path that we're supposed to fit on. And be confident, have self-worth. You don't want to have low self-esteem. People with low self-esteem end up in abusive relationships, but don't be cocky, but don't get too big for your britches. Don't be a diva.
Right.
So I ran the workshop How to Be Cocky, not to teach people to stomp on the little guy, but to have what I called confidence without limits. Confidence without some external thing policing you. And one of the things that was interesting from the participants in the workshop is what some of them said is, because one of the exercises we did is I put them in breakout rooms in pairs, and they had to talk about something they did well in the past 12 months. And just to practice bragging, to practice, you know, talking positively about themselves. And some of the participants said, some of the participants felt uncomfortable doing it, even with the assignment as to do it. And other participants said, I felt safe doing it here because it was assigned. But I know that if I step out into the world and do it there will be people who will police me. And even this image came for us in the workshop, because I work with the body of, like, you're really proud of yourself and you have this balloon that grows in your chest, this like excitement and elatement. And what if someone comes and pops it? Because I think we've all experienced that, where you're proud of yourself and you say, oh, like, look what I did. And then someone says, oh, like, why are you bragging, or why are you taking up so much space?
Totally.
And so, yeah, one of the assignments I gave everyone in the workshop, and I'll give everyone on the podcast, I'm giving y'all a lot of homework. I know you didn't sign up for it, but, you know, obviously you can pick and choose. But I really recommend you do at least one of the homeworks we're giving you, because they're life-changing homeworks. But one of the things we talked about in the workshop is having a brag buddy. So having a friend, someone you're close with, maybe it's someone who's in a similar industry as you, maybe it's just a good friend that you text a brag a day.
Mm.
Because it's again, this safe space where no one's gonna shit on you. You know, it's a collective thing where we wanna build our muscle of talking positively about ourselves. So many of us, that's difficult to do, in whether it's in our head or out loud. And so to start to build that, and I think to answer your question about hurting people, how do we make sure we don't hurt people? None of us are perfect. We're all gonna hurt people sometimes. If we need to, we can make amends.
Mhm.
You know, if we feel like we've done something and we need to apologize and make amends in some way, we can. And I think that by sharing, by stepping into your power, whatever you call it, having confidence without limits, there's so much healing and good you're going to bring into the world. And no, you're not going to be perfect all the time, and that's okay. But the good is going to far outweigh the bad. And my sense is that, you know, the people who follow you, Erin, probably have a strong conscience. And yeah, whether it's, you know, working, you know, like facing our own white supremacy or whatever sometimes comes up and maybe gets pointed out to us, or we pointed out to ourselves, you know, to do what we need to do to read the books and educate ourselves and
Yeah.
to take those steps. But yeah, my sense is, just from knowing you, the little bit that I know you so far, is that the people that are listening probably actually beat themselves too much up too much, rather than like don't have a, I don't think this is like the bro jock podcast that maybe those folks could use a little anti-oppression training.
Yeah, and you never know out there who's watching. I feel as though it's important to know, um to not always speak to the choir, you know, to not always preach to the choir. So it's, yeah, and I asked that question because that reason, you know, there's a sense of the abuser, you know, the abused becomes the abuser kind of thing. So
Yeah.
how do we, yeah, take that, and we're all on journeys, like you said, and we can't necessarily not hurt someone or people, but it is what you take away from that experience and then go forward and act on after, you know, you've made a mistake or anything like that. So there's a sense of like responsibility in a way, and a lot of my followers are white settlers, you know, and they're grappling with their own sense of, you know, rootedness in North America. And I think for one way, that's a really good reason to actually do some more work in terms of core energetics or even psychotherapy or somatic embodiment experiences, because there's so much that lives in our bodies and our psyches that we don't even know about, that we can't even intellectually understand, that we can't put into words.
Yeah, and of course, you know, hurt people, right? I'm sure
Yes.
you've heard that phrase. And so the more that we heal ourselves as well as educate ourselves, you know, the less we lash out in, you know, kind of in an unconscious way. But yeah, I think you're right. We all make mistakes, but it's how you handle the mistakes afterwards that's where you have the choice. If I could give you a pill that would make you never make a mistake, I would give it to you, but I haven't found that pill yet, or that 3-point strategy. So
yeah, I'm not sure if we would grow that much if we had those.
right. Yeah.
Bryn, do you have any workshops coming up? How can folks get in contact with you or follow you?
Yeah. So, I mean, I have a podcast. It's called the Sacred Mental Health Podcast. So, if you're interested in that, check it out. It's on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, blah, 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 Stitcher, all Google, I think it's on like 8. So, probably whichever one you use, it's probably there. I have a free workshop. I don't know. I think I might charge like $3 for this workshop. But anyways, it's called Money Magic. That's coming up in July. I don't have the date off the top of my head, but maybe I can give it to you and we can put in the show notes. Maybe July 23rd at 7 p.m. But
Sure.
check the show notes, folks. So if you want to, do some money magic, transform $3 into something else, that I think is going to be really fun. And if anyone is interested in the one-on-one work and exploring whether that's the right fit, I'd love to offer you a free 1-hour consultation where we can talk about whatever you're struggling with, what your goals are, your dreams are, your vision is, and whether we're the right fit, and have a chance to ask me any questions you might have about that kind of work. So if folks are interested in that, they can email me at bryn@brynbamber.com or send me a DM on Instagram or Facebook or LinkedIn, all the places.
All the places. We're contactable for sure. And just so everybody knows, Bryn is spelled Bryn, and then Bamber is Bamber. Check Bryn out on Instagram or your preferred platform, your podcast. What's it called again, if you could repeat that?
Sacred Mental Health.
Sacred Mental Health. Amazing. Amazing, 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 Bryn. Thank you so much. You've only just skimmed the surface of, what you do and how you go about doing it, and even your experience. And I honor that, and I thank you so much for bringing that into the space today and for sharing it with everyone here today. So
thank you so much for having me.
Amazing. Thanks, folks. And thanks again to Juniper Naturopathic Clinic in Fort McMurray, Alberta, for sponsoring this episode. We're here every Wednesday night offering live Inspiring Insights podcast episodes. If you'd like to tune in, just go onto YouTube and type in Reawaken Co. Inspiring Insights. We're the same on Spotify and a bunch of other podcast platforms. Thank you and have a lovely evening.